Hey friends, welcome back to the Thrive and Align Healing Podcast. For all you new listeners, thank you for joining us. We are so excited to serve everyone and just offer up weekly knowledge, tips, things to help you live a more holistic, balanced lifestyle so you can move from a place of just surviving to a place of thriving in your life. This is episode 39, and we're going to talk about change and so this comes out on New Year's Eve. So we're at the cusp of a new year and we're just transitioned into winter, a time of reflection. So it's just a great time to reflect and then set our intention for what we want 2021 to be. Most of us have felt like 2020 has just happened to us, not happened for us, but happened to us. And we have felt, I think, as a whole society and a world, very powerless and at the mercy of just everything, the mercy of the universe, the mercy of God, the mercy of the government, the mercy of each other. And just constantly, I felt like 2020 can be labeled the year of walking on eggshells. And I think as a human, most of us do not enjoy living that way. So we're just going to use this episode as just kind of a springboard to like creating what you want in 2021 and getting your brain to a place to believe that you can create what you want in 2021, regardless of the things going on outside of you. So I'm going to start with reflection. Carmen, tell me about 2020 for you and your business. For you personally or for you and your business, like what are some things that 2020 has given you or taken away from you and what you see 2021 for your business or for your life, whichever?
Sure. So 2020 has definitely been a challenge, right? On several different levels. 2020 has been a little bit of a tough year. It kind of started out a little bit rocky for me. I lost my dad Christmas Eve last year. So this has been a year of grief for me, for my family, in addition to a lot of the changes with the pandemic. And it's drastically changed actually how my business is, not necessarily what my business, that's still the same, but as far as accessibility to folks and trying to keep my business and myself in naturopathic medicine accessible to folks and trying to change things online, becoming more flexible and embracing technology a little bit more. It's been a little bit of a fun challenge this year. And definitely, I think my expectations have had to be challenged quite a bit this year, right? Because as a small business owner, things took a dive, things change. A lot of people have, gotten scared. A lot of people aren't coming in. A lot of people don't have money. They don't have the funds to make their health a priority, right? They don't know where to turn. And so trying to kind of adjust within these new constructs of 2020 has definitely kept me on my toes. So what do we do with that, right? We take those as learning opportunities, right? Try to figure out. So I tried to diversify my business a little bit more this year so that I wouldn't have to solely rely on folks coming in for consultations, because not everybody can do that these days, right? So being able to look ahead to 2021 to sort of foresee how to help people in a different way, right? So that I can still serve folks, but that will probably look different than it has in the last 3 or 6 months, right? I think it's been a little bit of a challenge, even just kind of for my mental health. I miss seeing people. I miss going going to events, right? I like to go and explore quite a bit. And just by a lot of the events being canceled in the fall, I mean, craft fairs, county fairs, trips, all of those being canceled has definitely changed the opportunities to be able to hang out with people, to meet new people, has been a little bit of a challenge this year too. So, yeah.
It's 2021. What do
Yeah.
you
Let's.
what do you see for yourself? What intentions are you setting for 2021?
So my intentions for 2021 are to, that's a good question. To meet that challenge, I guess. Yeah. And be a little bit more creative, as far as trying to still offer services. I am going to have to diversify a little bit more in my practice. And so I am looking at producing products for people, or packages of supplements for people in programs, so that they still have access to those, but maybe they're a little bit more budget friendly. So my intentions are to take those things that I've kind of learned in 2020 and like really embrace them a little bit more, in trying to figure out how I can still be happy, uh, not feel like I'm overworked and stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still about finding new ways and just kind of being more creative and exploring different ways to reach people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm hearing that a lot with folks, is that a lot of people are feeling really isolated and secluded, especially with the holidays and the year wrapping up. They're looking back and saying, wow, we appreciate our family and their friends, but we still, aren't able to interact with them like we would. So I've got to find ways as a business person, as a small business owner, to reach out and find other ways to engage people, so that, one, they don't feel like alone, but two, that they can still get their health concerns addressed and answered, without, being necessarily in the same room.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
cool.
Yeah. Some days I feel like it's going to be an interesting start for 2021, but kind of, excited to be able to implement these things. So.
Yeah. Cool. It's about pivoting, right?
It is.
I think as entrepreneurs, we hear that. I don't know. I can only speak for myself. I hear that a lot as an entrepreneur. Like, you have to be flexible and you have to be willing to pivot always.
Yes.
I don't know if that message has been taken out into the masses and just in general in life. Yeah. Like, flexibility is key and willing to pivot, because if we aren't flexible, then we're resistant. And when we're resistant, we're just kind of standing with our feet buried in the sand and like, no, like kind of throwing a fit, almost like a toddler. Like, no, I demand that outside of me changes, instead of like, okay, the weather has changed. Maybe I should go get a coat, instead of standing outside saying, no, I want it to be summer, even though it's December 25th.
Right. I think you're right. I think, when we're told or taught to be flexible, right, and to pivot, it's also, you're being flexible with your expectations, right? And so you're going into things not having this expectation of like, hey, you know what, this product, this idea is just going to take off like gangbusters, right? Yeah. It's like, recognizing, okay, I'm making this change, and what comes of it is going to be another opportunity to learn. Yep. Right. And we, kind of maneuver through this unknown, and with an open mind, and learn from that and say, okay, so maybe this isn't working now, or maybe this just isn't working, with this audience, but let's try and figure out what's going to be the best direction next.
Yeah.
And then if that, works out, fantastic. And if it doesn't, you're changing directions again.
Everything. Yeah. I know. I think that for me and my business and our business, Thrive in Aligned Healing, I think that was one of the lessons 2020 was trying to teach me. It's a lot of us think that there's one way to success.
Yeah.
I definitely did, right? Like, I'm going to create the most ultimate post. I post it and I have this expectation that it's going to change. Like, people are going to start coming in, right? And then nobody comes in. And then you feel defeated because this expectation was like, this is the one thing that's going to change it. Or like I've talked to some entrepreneurs that think like, I'm going to launch my podcast and my podcast is what's going to be it. It's going to change my business. And so what we've been in, Thrive and Align's been in existence for, is it almost 2 years? Is it a year and a half or almost two?
So. Yeah, almost 2.
And I think for almost like a year and a half of it, like I had that mentality. It's this one thing. And then that one thing would fail. And then we do another thing and that thing would fail. And finally, it's like my brain has come to a place of like, there's no one thing. It's all the things, right? And it's the flexibility to be able to look at things and be like, okay, that didn't work. That doesn't mean anything about us or our service or our value. It just means that that didn't work. Instead of throwing it out, how can we shift it and change it? Like constant evaluation and evaluating like, okay, we've been doing the same thing and it hasn't been working. Why are we still doing the same thing? It doesn't work. Let's do something different, right? And I feel like that's a great analogy for life. Like 2020 was just like this kind of like come to Jesus meeting, if you will. Like we've been doing the same thing and it hasn't worked. And we keep doing it. And 2020 was like, let's just stop the insanity. Let's quit doing this. And you guys are going to have to pivot as humanity and make some different choices and make some different decisions. It's uncomfortable. It sucks. I know you guys hate change. Humans do not like change. They love consistency. They love stability. They love predictability. And 2020 did a fantastic job of ripping all those things away from us, our safety blankets, and saying, you've got to change. You've got to change for Mother Earth. You've got to change for one another. You've got to change for yourselves. You've got to change for the universe. It's now is the time.
Yeah.
What a beautiful analogy too for winter solstice. Like right now we're recording this. Today is the 21st. It's the winter solstice. It's a big deal in the astrology world because Jupiter, Mars, and Pluto. Is that right? No?
Neptune.
Saturn.
Jupiter,
Yes.
Saturn, and Mars are aligning.
Aligned.
Yeah. They're so close. I went and saw them last night, but tonight they're supposed to be aligned right on top of each other.
Cool. And like it's this big energy shift, right? And it's this big like shift in universal, like the universe too. So yeah,
it's like huge shift on the celestial level, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot of power behind that. So I think this is exciting in looking ahead at 2020, right? As we pivot,
2021.
Or 2021, as we begin to pivot and take those roles back, right? Take our power back, so that we have the opportunity to consciously decide to change, right? And make 2021 a year of enjoyment, a year of success, a year of wealth, in whatever way that may look like, even if, the world around us is still different.
Right.
Yeah. Is that you're not walking on eggshells anymore. You're taking that power back to say, okay, you know what, let's reframe this, put a different perspective on it so that, I can still do what I want to do and make those changes to be successful in all the realms within our life. Yeah,
exactly. I think that, I've been kind of hesitant to really talk confidently about this because coming from the human services world, the counseling world, there's an indoctrination of handling victim mentality and victims with kid gloves, right? It's just like, you don't want to victimize the victim.
Yes.
Okay. And so it's like this very taboo, like almost this indoctrination, just have compassion, feel sorry for them, right? And just let them have whatever they want, because we don't want to victimize the victim. Just pacify and tell them how loved they are, right? And like, that's just hammered kind of subconsciously in you throughout undergrad, throughout grad school for me, right? And then going into higher education, they just magnify that even more, right? Until I came to a place where it was like, wait, me being told and held down and felt sorry for the traumas in my life has done nothing but strip me of more and more power, right? And it's not even stripping, it's me being programmed to continue to give my power away. Right. And I think that has been, as a society where we have lived for a long time, it's just this victim mentality that we as a people are powerless, right? The people with all the money have the power, the rich. The government has the power, right? Anywhere that there's power and money, that's where all our power is. And we are underneath and subjective to all of this. And it works well, right? Because then we keep giving our power away. We believe they have the power and we keep giving our power away, right? And then they pit us against one another, saying that we are victimizing one another, and like the whole Black Lives Matter movement, in terms of like pitting us together against each other, that, basically white people hate black people hate white people, right? And that, and so we demonize one another instead of saying like, no, like, this isn't, we all have the power. We all have our own power and we give our power away. And where we find the answer to this is love and compassion, not a continuum victimization.
Right. I think that being able to empower people and show them that power is within us. It's not something that is granted to us or something that's like, okay, now you have power. No, it comes from within us, right? And I think you're exactly right. When we're talking about, especially in the therapy and the counseling and the psychology world, it is trying to help that person who sees themselves as a victim, to help them, what is the word, I guess, process that trauma, that event, whatever, it is that they felt they were victim to or victimized to, that that is something that they can process so that it's not as heavy, right? That it's not as like at the forefront in their world. So
Right.
They can kind of move on through it, versus what you're suggesting is, hey, if you change your perspective, recognize that instead of seeing ourselves as victims and, having that power taken away, instead you have that power and you're giving it away, right? Or have given it away, versus, so then it's internal versus something that's happening to us out, externally. It's a very different perspective. But it's a great, opportunity and great exercise for people to recognize, especially in such a world of uncertainty these days, of, hey, also all these things are changing on around us, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to give that power away. We don't have to be a victim to it.
Right.
That's your choice. We all have that choice.
And I can already hear the critics, so I'm gonna clarify the shit out of this. that is not, I am not saying that there are not events that you are a victim of, right? Rape, incest, being robbed, right? People breaking in your home. In that moment of time, you are the victim, right? In that moment of time. And that, and I'm not saying that you gave your power away, so it's your fault that you were raped, right? Where the problem lies in this is that there's an environment that continues to say, 15 years ago you were raped and you were a victim of that circumstance. You were, right? This person overpowered you. They had control in the situation, right? You didn't. But that was 15 years ago, right? And we stay in the identity of victimhood, right? There's victims in an event, in a circumstance, and then you can then identify as a victim and carry that on for years. And that's where the rub is for me. It's like, yes, let's acknowledge that there has been and there currently is racism in the United States, probably around the world. I've never lived anywhere else, so I can't speak of that, right? Yes, there are men that are verbally and physically and emotionally assaulted by women. There are women that are verbally, emotionally, and physically assaulted by men. Little girls get raped, little boys get raped and molested. Yes, those events happen, right? We know it. We know people that have all experienced it. So we're not saying that doesn't happen. And we want to validate that this did happen to you. And it creates a scar within us. We don't walk away from that unscarred, right? But we also don't have to walk away from it damaged and broken for the rest of our life, right? We can walk away with a scar and move forward and still create the life we want and still have a life that we choose to have. We don't have to identify as damaged and broken from there on out. So
That's beautifully said.
Thank you. Because I hear it in people like we can't like say that it's just like in my coaching world, right? Like if you're victimized, like, well, you feeling victimized is just the thoughts in your brain. And there's like one part of the coaching sector that like will jump all over that shit and be like, you're re-victimizing the victim. You're not validating their experience. And then there's a whole other sector that's like, it's an event. Now you have thoughts about it, right?
Right.
And I think that there's like another sector of us is like, yes, I want to acknowledge your pain and I want to acknowledge that event, and you should acknowledge that event, right? Like you should feel the emotions from that event. But I also want to empower you to then move forward from that scar and no longer see yourself as damaged, but fully capable, fully empowered to live and create a life that you choose.
Right. So I love that. I think that, it's beautifully said. Because it's recognizing that, those events are part of our history within our life, but that doesn't mean we find ways that we're not reliving that on a regular basis. Yes. Yeah.
And like, I mean, we talked about it last week when tapping, right? Like people that suffer from PTSD to go through talk therapy and talk about that situation, that event over and over is more damaging than it is helpful, because we're triggering the same emotions and same chemical response as we had the first time, versus saying, yeah, that happened. And here was my response to it. And I did the best I could.
Yeah.
My response might have been really shitty and I burned my life down. Yes. I did the best I could. It was what I did. But I'm making different choices now. And I think that that's where tapping and other holistic modalities, for me as a previous experiencer of PTSD, has been so much more beneficial, right? Like I don't need to relive that. I need to see that it's a scar and a part of my journey, but I don't want to focus on that. I want to create the life I want and just see that that was like 5 chapters ago in my life and not keep writing that in every chapter that I continue to live.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that's where like 2020 for me, like is a perfect, like 2020 for us was like, well, like we're acknowledging that this hasn't worked.
Right.
It doesn't serve humanity. It doesn't serve nature. It doesn't serve Mother Earth. All right. Now then we can either choose to be empowered and acknowledge our scars and say that we are not our scars and we're going to create something different and something beautiful. Or we can continue to carry our scars and identify with them and continue to suffer.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, it's so powerful to frame it that way, right? Because you're recognizing, just like when our body starts that healing process, right? You're like, yeah, something's happened, something's different, but you can heal through that, right? So those scars are, they're visible. But that's in the past, right? And this is opportunity to change and to start anew. Yeah. To make those changes or put up a new framework, a new story, a new chapter in our lives to be the success you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. Which is scary for some people, right? But also, like, if you reframe it, super exciting. Super exciting in the fact that you get to look at your life and starting in 2021 and be like, okay, I don't like how things have gone in my life, in society, in the world.
Right.
I'm going to be the change I want to see, starting with me.
Yes.
And I see that I'm coming from a place of locus of control, empowerment. I don't tell the world, society, and the government to make these changes. I become the change.
Mm-hmm.
And right, like, and I think that's where the disconnect's been, is like we've been from a victim role, like we expect you guys to change.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, wait, we're empowered.
Right.
I to change. I become the change.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
And
Because then it's limitless, right? Like the possibilities are limitless when you start here, when you start with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just like I'm seeing with me, like it's scary to step into that empowered place, right? Because you step into that empowered place, there's 2 things. I have to take personal responsibility for my life and everything that happens in my life, which is not nearly as fun as blaming other people. And 2, you're putting yourself in a place of opposition. People are going to like what you have to say, and people are not going to like what you have to say. And it's almost like I'm coming to that crossroads where I have to be willing, like, am I willing to spread the message that has been burning inside me, that I believe is given to me, that's not just of myself, to help other people? Or do I want to keep playing small because I'm afraid of the opposition?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that all of us are being asked that right now.
Mm-hmm. It's a different kind of challenge, right? And if we're a little bit unsure, right, it's this unknown, right? We're a little bit unsure what that outcome is going to be, but taking those steps to follow what you're excited about and that change that you want to see can often overpower a lot of those fears or those, like uneasiness, that uncomfortableness of starting something different, starting something new, right? That you haven't seen before.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, you're right. Like, it's exciting because it's like, I like seeing a world that's empowered, like truly empowered. Like it becomes a beautiful world because people aren't victimizing one another anymore.
Yeah.
Right. They're not demanding their way at the expense of another.
Mm-hmm.
They are choosing to get their way, but it is for the benefit of them and others.
Yeah.
So that's my challenge for the listeners, for you guys, is to just to take some time to reflect back on 2020. Reflect back, like, what did you like? What worked? And then do that one first. And then create a category of what did not work in my life.
Yeah.
And then what do I want to do differently? And then start like incorporating things in your life that are going to help empower you, whether that be meditation, tapping, journaling, hiring a coach, starting to work on your health, and choosing Dr. Carmen, a naturopathic physician, a natural way, of course. You wouldn't be here if that wasn't your thing, right? And starting to just find like I'm the captain of my ship.
Mm-hmm.
How am I going? The ocean has been rough this year. What direction am I going to choose to sail now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, kiddo?
I think that's the perfect challenge for 2021. I'm excited.
Big things, free people. I get to experience failure and opposition this year, but it'll be good.
Big things.
All right, my friends, we will see you. Have a wonderful, wonderful New Year's Eve night. Stay safe, and we will catch you the week after New Year's.
Sounds good.